Welcome to the Women's Football Show here on PLZ Soccer's YouTube channel. I'm Kerry Pollock, Cara Henderson and Alison McConnell are here with me. A goal-thrilling weekend in the Scottish Cup, some high scorelines. Let's see how the games played out. It was Westlake Ladies 1, Rangers 24, Glasgow Girls 0, Celtic 13, Hearts 1, Hibernian 0, Partick Thistle 1, Glasgow City 3, Aberdeen beat Gartcairn 3-1, Rossvale 0, Motherwell 7, Spartans 3, Glenrothes 0, Queen's Park 1, Hamilton 3 and East Fife 0, Montrose 3. Alison, a total of 64 goals scored in those games, more than half of them coming from Celtic and Rangers. It's really quite incredible, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't know, the optics of it don't look particularly good, to be honest. However, I'm sure that's not a consideration for either Joe Potter or Elena Sadiku. I think they'll just be delighted to come through professional performances, quite clearly not taking their foot off the gas at all. No real surprises. I think when you look at it, I think maybe the only notable one was Hearts beating Hibs. I think there was a bit of intrigue about where that one would go. It had been one win apiece in the two games that they'd met already this term. But yeah, I think the big scorelines, I think sometimes leave people wincing from an outside perspective at times.
Have you noticed that there's been a particular focus on this killer instinct this season, particularly with Celtic and Rangers?
Yeah, I think so. I think definitely in the league, obviously, you know that the league title was settled on goal difference last term, and it has been so close in previous campaigns that goal difference has been a factor. Certainly if it wasn't a factor in terms of the ultimate decision of where the title was going, it was a factor psychologically in the running, with teams maybe sometimes feeling as though they had a point of a difference given superior goal difference. So I think there's been absolutely no question this term that goal difference has been uppermost in the minds of the top three going into games, and managers calling for players to be a bit more clinical with performances. Obviously this is a cup game, like goal difference isn't really a factor, but I think just the same philosophy, wanting to have the same kind of remit and the same style and the same standard just in cup games or league games. But certainly I think across the league campaign, I think it's very difficult to miss that there has been a real focus on making sure that teams are first and foremost winning games. But when that's done, it's not easing off, it's not like passing the ball about, it's not just taking a control of the game, it's continuing and keeping going and keeping the foot to the floor.
From teams in the lower divisions, kind of what sort of mentality is required when you're coming up against a team that you know are capable of putting 24 goals past you?
Yeah, I think it's really, really tough, because you see even in the top league the difference between Rangers and Celtic in some games, you know, putting 7-8 past teams. So I think it's really, really tough. I think there's a part that embracing playing, you know, the top teams. I know when I played for Glasgow Women, we got drawn with Celtic in a cup time. We actually managed to get a result against them. It was way back at the start, just as Celtic were going full time, to be fair. But it was actually really exciting getting the opportunity to play against the top teams and, you know, challenge yourself against top players. Don't get me wrong, those scorelines are brutal. You know, that I don't even know if it's a mentality thing. It becomes just a bit of a pride and embarrassment thing, is that you want to limit it, because that's not nice for any team. But there is a part that they've played against one of the best teams in the country, so I'm sure that's something to take from it. But yeah, no, it is brutal, and they're such a daunting task for anybody, to be honest, as well.
What will they have learned going up against two sides like that?
I don't know. I think it's hard. You can't really judge these teams on results against. I think the message I would take is, of course, there'll be learning curves. You'll see what it takes to be at the top level. But I think it'd be more, put it to bed. You know, don't think about it. You've got the rest of a season. You've got the rest of the campaign to do. I think as well, like, it's hard to take a learning curve from from conceding 24 goals. That's really, really brutal. But it's also the nature of the game and the nature of the beast, I suppose. So yeah, it's not easy for them though.
Celtic come up against a different challenge in the coming days, Ali, Real Madrid, and then they head to the Netherlands just 6 days later in the Champions League.
Yeah, I think the disparities maybe not been quite as acute as what we're talking about here in cup games, but I think there has been a very clear disparity for Celtic in the Champions League. I think they've maybe had their eyes open to the standard when you're in amongst the last 16. I think they're without a point so far. I think there will be elements of some of the performances that they'll be encouraged by, but I think on the whole it has been quite a sobering experience, I think, for them to go and to see this is a standard and this is a level that if you want to go and compete against, there is still quite a bit of distance for them to get to. I don't think there's any shame in that. I think for the likes of Chelsea and Real Madrid, particularly Chelsea, they're a team that you would expect to be going on to challenge to win that trophy this season, and I think Celtic will really have had their eyes open to just the differentials and levels. So they can't go through. They've got 2 games. They've not registered a point. I think this season and this experience has all been about getting a feel for it, getting an understanding of it. I think they'll want to go and put a strong performance in against Madrid. I think they felt a bit uneasy at the scoreline over in Spain when they played one another. I think they felt as though they maybe competed better than what the scoreline would suggest, given the wee flurry of late goals that came. So I think they'll want to test themselves. There's no pressure on Celtic. They're already, this campaign's going to come to an end next week. It's not as if they're fighting to go through. I think they'll want to take something. I think they'd be delighted to take even just a point from it. But certainly I think they'll use it as a learning curve. And then I think come back after the break into the new year, I think you'll maybe see a greater focus inevitably on the domestic football, because I think you can see just by virtue of their league position just now that they've toiled to cope with the demands of playing in European football and managing a domestic schedule. I think at times it's been fairly hectic for them, and I don't think they quite have the depth of squad yet to cope with it.
What would their expectations would have been going into this campaign? Would it be, like you said, just to have a feel for the levels here?
I think Elena Sadiku was quite clear. I think when she spoke, she had said, no one, Celtic were almost punching above their weight to get into the group stages. I think you have to remember when you get to this level, it's the last 16 of the Champions League. It is a fairly high level. You are amongst the best in Europe. I think you see that when you look at where the teams are coming from, where they're playing their football. It's a very high standard. I don't think there would have been any real expectation. I think for Celtic it would have been getting there was a success, essentially, and then whatever you can pick up as a bonus. And I think they will be keen to pick up something, certainly from this final game at home against Real Madrid, and then they're away to Twente to close the campaign off next week. I think they'll be keen to register something on board, have something positive to show for it.
Cara, let's go on to your game then. A 3-1 defeat at the hands of Glasgow City. You got yourself on the score sheet, but are the performances heading in the right direction for you?
Yeah, I think that's definitely the past couple of weeks we've started to play in a way that felt much more like how we wanted to, and I think that yesterday obviously you don't want to be out of the cup before Christmas. We had such a good cup run last year, and we found ourselves out of both. But I think that there's more positives than negatives to take from yesterday, and I think that there's been elements of the performance that have been missing maybe at the start of the season that we're starting to see come back. So I think, again, you never like to get beaten, so I'm not going to sit here and pretend that was fun, but I think definitely looking back on it, there's we've taken really good steps that put us into 3 games before Christmas where we want to try and get maximum points.
And Spartans and Montrose on the horizon as well. Is this a good time for you guys to try and get a run going? Yeah,
I mean, it's not going to be easy. It's so tight. I think Spartans are only 3 points behind us, and Montrose have already shown we've dropped points down this season. So it's going to be 2 really, really tough games. We're at home though, and I think that for us as a squad and as a group of players, we need to be looking at taking maximum points. And as I said, that definitely won't be easy, but it's something that I think that we're more than capable of doing.
Absolutely. Well, let's go on to the derby. Hearts and Hibs, a 1-0 win for the Jambos. It just seems as if it's going back and forth between these two, Ali.
Yeah, I think obviously Hearts were very dominant in the opening encounter when they met in September at Easter Road, come away with the 4-0 win, and then obviously Hibs win the last one and then Hibs take this one. So I think they'll see that as a huge win, quite a significant win. Obviously takes them through into the next round of the Cup. I think the draws this evening takes them through into that. However, it also just gives them a bit of bragging rights. They've been slightly the better of the two teams as their league position would show. I think a very, very strong start to the campaign for Eva Olled's side, and then I think they've got a pretty huge game next weekend against Glasgow City, so that'll be an intriguing one.
There's 3 points between them just now in the league table. Is there much between the two sides when you look at their squads?
Yeah, I think there probably is. I think when you look at Glasgow City, it's a team full of international players. I think Hearts have a good squad. I think they have a good pool, but I think there is still a difference here in levels, and I think that will probably be reflected in the way that the campaign plays out over the course of the full campaign.
Well, let's just have a look at what's coming up midweek. We have Motherwell taking on Rangers, Hearts will host Glasgow City, Partick Thistle against Spartans, Dundee United against Hibs and Montrose against Aberdeen. Hearts and Glasgow City the pick for you, Alison?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's an intriguing one. Anything that gives way in that, you know, that Rangers and Celtic are looking on with some interest to see if anything gives way. Conversely, I think if Hearts were to take anything, it's quite a statement for them.
And what's the expectation from your opponents on Wednesday night, Cara?
A really, really tough game. I think that, you know, it's so tight between us, Motherwell, Spartans, and then obviously when you look below as well, it's super tight with the 3 relegation spots. So looking forward actually to the week, I think it'll be a really good week. There's a good card of games. And yeah, just a tough game, but one I'm really looking forward to.
Absolutely. Well, best of luck to all the teams on Wednesday night and Celtic in the Champions League, of course. On behalf of myself, Ali and Cara, thanks for listening and thanks for watching.